The question is often given to me why my number was associated with the red triangle, as it is noted in history, has recorded this, that the Germans gave different signia, different colored triangles to different nationalities, and also gypsies had different colored triangles. Also, certain sexual orientation had different triangles. The red triangle was indicated a political prisoner. Jews were not, I would say, Jews were not referred to or registered as political prisoners. They were usually Jewish prisoners. So the reason why we had a red triangle, because when I was handed the number in Mauthausen that I had to fix to my jacket, it had the red triangle, and basically indicating that my category was a political prisoner. Why they did this, I only found out many years after, of course, my liberation, and also already while I was in America, I found out through some information from Yad Vashem that about the negotiation that went on with the Hungarian leadership in 1944, before they took us to Auschwitz to make a deal with the German with Eichmann to supply certain material for them, which would certainly help their war effort, but not in any way, I would say, war material or explosives, but trucks and food items and so forth. And so basically, which fell through and never came into play. But nevertheless, the order was given by Eichmann to have approximately 125,000 Hungarian prisoners, and should not be tattooed, and also probably, I think, registered as political prisoners, which eventually, if this deal would gel or come through, then these people would be released from the camps according to the original offer. This basically is the reason why some of the Hungarian people that were brought to Auschwitz already in early of 1944 came under the, I would say, the heading of political prisoners. I think many of my peers, or here especially in America, many are on an impression that most of the concentration camps were only for Jews. The fact is that as far as the percentages are concerned, Jews were a very small percentage. For instance, in our camp in Melk and in Ebensee, I would say maybe, this is a very rough estimate, maybe the Jewish population numbered maybe around 30 or 40%. There were French prisoners, there were a tremendous number of Russian prisoners. Some of the Russian prisoners actually should have been they were I would say, captured in the war, and should have been in the prison camps for war prison camps. But why they brought them into the concentration camp, I am not sure. There were Greeks, many different nationalities, and of course there were some gypsies also. It so happened that one of our capos or Blockoutster in Melk was his name was Fritz, and He happened to be a gypsy. He was probably in his late 30s. I think every time I think of him, he was a pretty fair individual. He was not out-and-out murderer like some of the others, of the other capos that have been in charge of many other barracks. And the only ones that really showed anti-Semitism, even in those circumstances, even if we are all, basically in the same situation, were some of the French prisoners. I remember many French prisoners just spit out a lot of hatred toward Jews, even though I couldn't understand much of their language, but I knew what they were spitting was anti-Semitism or hatred towards Jewish prisoners. So, but from any of the other nationalities, I don't remember any time encountering any anti-Semitic, I would say, slurs or approach, so forth. So this is the first time. The man who handed me my number in Mauthausen, 68-818, fixed on a piece of cloth with ink pen that I had to sew on my jacket. I looked at him, and he happened to be a colored person, African, I imagine. Why? This is the first time in my life that I laid my eyes on somebody of that color. I've never seen a African or a colored person before in my life. He was the only one in Mauthausen. I didn't see any, maybe a pair or a brother of his or any relative. He was the only one that happened to be of that color. And so basically, this was another one that I have encountered. And as life went on, as we were assigned to certain barracks, we always, encountered different nationalities. But usually, most of the Jewish prisoners, especially that came from a certain part of Hungary, always try to see if they can sort of stick together and also have put up their well, there was no belongings that anybody had, but trying to arrange that the bunks that we were sleeping on usually was in the neighborhood of people that came from the same area or people that we had some kind of a connection to and relationship.
What about American prisoners? Did you meet any then?
Yes, they did bring in once. For some reason or other, I had milk. One morning they put in our barracks 4 American, healthy-looking, strong boys. Unfortunately, I remember this quite clearly, that we could not communicate because there was not one individual in our barracks that would speak English, and they did not speak any other language except English. But we understood by their emotions and questions, so forth, that they just parachuted down from a plane that was shot down that morning. In other words, it wasn't too many hours before that they left their base in England on a bombing mission. Now, again, why they have brought them into our camp and put them up in our barracks, what was their sin, or why not put them in a prisoner of war camp, I am not aware of, I don't know. Unfortunately, I think that 3 didn't last very long. I heard that they, after about 3 or 4 weeks, they were either killed or they died of natural causes. But there was only one left that I remember, but after the 3 of them were gone, somebody came in and fetched the other one and took him out of of our barracks, and we never saw him again. So, it was a little bit of I think for us to get some news where the war was going, even though we could not actually have a real conversation, but in sign language and so forth, somehow we understood that things are not going very well for the Germans. The reason why I decided not to head for Podgorica, because there was no doubt in my mind that there is absolutely nobody there, there is nothing there. So we tried again to stick together in groups or in a relationship with different. There were people, a few from Podgorica, there were a few from neighboring villages to Podgorica and so forth, but they all said we are going to stay in Munkac because everybody else is going to stay in Munkac. Didn't make any sense to go back to the smaller villages because unless to go and visit and then come back to Munkac. Even in Munkac, we had to scrounge around and see whether we can get some empty, empty apartments where we can settle ourselves, because everything was occupied eventually after the Jews were taken away. The Gentiles probably came in and occupied the homes and so forth, and they put a claim, and this is now theirs. I don't know whether they had to pay to the Hungarian government for acquiring any Jewish piece of property. So there was absolutely no doubt, there's no need to go back where there's nobody there and there's no relationship that you can maintain with anybody. So let's stay together in one place. And this is in Munkac, where there was more room to be found and spread out. And that's where we decided to stay with many hundreds and maybe even a few thousands others. So that's where we stayed. And then the rest, when we decided to leave, is history that is recorded in my book. First of all, the uniform that I appear in this picture, it is not actually a uniform. It so happened that kippas were not as popular as it is now. There were two types of head coverings that mostly of my peers in my age have had. One was the cap, which I had a cap with a daszek, they call it in Polish. And so I had this type of head covering, but I also had something which the other kids didn't have, or my peers didn't have. There was like an army uniform cap. I don't know how, I cannot really remember exactly how I acquired this army cap. But there are times when I wore the army cap, and there are times when I wore my little cap. So why the interchange? When I wore one and I didn't wear the other one, I can't tell you. Maybe it was how I felt. Maybe it was in what mood I was. Anyhow, also when I was sitting on the horse, that jacket that I'm wearing looks like with two pockets. It's a little bit different than the average shirt or jacket that we were wearing usually. So it's just a coincidence. The horse, it happened. Somebody came along with a horse and was offering rides, and I made a deal to ride on the horse, and I happened to have been wearing the army cap and this particular jacket. So some people might interpret this as it was a special uniform. It was not a special uniform. All this is a coincidence, and it so happened the horse, I never saw that horse again. Maybe somebody made a few shekels or a few marks offering a ride on the horse, and I was also made a deal and took a ride. I decided, when the minute that I was notified that I have the permission or I have the ability to go down to Bremerhaven and board a ship to America, I decided to take advantage of it because I was suddenly sick and tired of the promises that were broken constantly. My only intention in being a member of the kibbutz, and I was a true kibbutz member. I was not somebody that just was there for the purpose of trying to get into Aliyah Bet. I was there because I felt that it is the only place to go for us after this Chorban, and I was a tremendous Zionist suddenly that I turned into, even though that I had no Zionist education and so forth. But nevertheless, after all this time that I was there and I saw what was going on, tremendous disappointments, and it was not a true kibbutz spirit like probably they had in Israel in those days. But it was everybody was basically trying to fend for himself, and see. And there were some greedy members of our kibbutz, and they were there practically only to take advantage of the situation. And I felt that this was unfair, so I figured this is tremendous, one disappointment after the other, and I am going to say goodbye to everybody and get out of here and go to America and see. I can always go to Israel, maybe from America. It would be much easier to reach my destination than from this particular place.
But that also meant leaving your sisters, going to America. So was that an easy decision in that respect?
No, because my sisters announced very openly and very forcefully that this is their destination. They want to go to America. So I knew that if they will succeed, eventually this is where they're going to end up. They did not want to go to Aliyah Beit to Israel. It is I who wanted to do this, but I was constantly disappointed because they did not. They after the promise that I would be on the next transport, they canceled me out. So consequently, I was the one who wanted to. My sisters had declared very openly this is their destination. This is where they want to go, not because basically so much because they wanted to, but their husbands decided that they want to go to America. So I imagine they have to go where their husbands goes, no? So I knew that was their destination. So when I decided to take advantage of the transport of the young boys to America, I did not even have a chance to notify them and let them know that I'm taking that next ship from Bremerhaven. So they found out later that I certainly did, but I had no cell phone or other way of notifying them. So I didn't even say goodbye to them. I just figured eventually we'll meet in America, God willing. Yes, I met Elie Wiesel in Sighet. I think at the age, I don't remember exactly, it must have been at the age of 10 or 11. And my mother went to visit her parents or my grandparents in Sighet. And while I was there, my grandfather told me, would you like to visit a cheder that is in Sighet and see how it is conducted here, how the Seder of the Cheder is compared to where I come from. And I said, why not? And I remember exactly that it must have been very shortly before Shavuos, because in the Cheder where he took me to, there was a big, I would say, singing and practice going over of Akdomas. Akdomas Millen the Shiroim Shiso, which is something which is usually recited on Shavuos itself. So basically, but we did it also in Munkach, but with a particular done with a particular melody, particular thing, and it was done the same way over there. And after we were just about to leave, my grandfather said, "Would you like to meet some of the nice young boys your age here?" And I said, "Of course, why not?" So he introduced me to a group of boys, some of the names I still remember, and one of the boys was Elie Wiesel. So I really think it must have been him, but I did not maintain any long-distance relationship after I left. In fact, there was not so easy to maintain a long-distance relationship anyhow. So it was nice while it lasted. It was nice to meet these boys. It was nice to visit the cheder, but that's it.